Bridget Murphy back again with Ray, Shane, and Damian. We're here to talk to you today about socialization, what it is, what it isn't, and all sorts of good stuff. So let's just dive right in. Shane, I'm going to go to you first this time. Let's talk about what you think socialization of dogs is.
Socialization of dogs is essentially exposing them to people, place, things, environments, getting them out there to get more comfortable with a new environment and essentially to build their confidence up. That's what it's all about. Just essentially to get them to a point where they're neutral out and about, and you can take them anywhere and everywhere. And that has a lot of things that you can do with that being said. But essentially, that's what I see as exposing the dogs.
Yeah, that neutrality is kind of the key word there. Damon, what do you tell your clients that socialization is?
So I sum it up that your dog can be in any social situation and be okay, comfortable, and neutral in those situations. So you can take them around people, you can take them around other dogs, you can take them to new places, different environments, and that they can be neutral and relaxed and successful in those social situations.
What do you guys think about, because quite often I think when dog owners talk about socialization, they think my dog needs to go to doggy daycare or puppy school, all of those things. So it's social with other dogs. What do you tell your clients about that? Shane, I see you're waving your magic wand, Shane.
Yeah, I got it. Dog parks for me, I don't really agree with that as socialization. Socialization is more of a structured thing. As a dog trainer, I don't like to take the dogs and let them just roam around and with zero control. A big part of socialization is really setting your dogs up for success. With that being said, taking them to those dog parks and all that isn't really teaching them anything. I would rather have it be structured where I can control the outcome, because dogs can put too much pressure on other dogs too. Some might not be as social as other dogs. So I want to be able to control the outcome from a more structured standpoint and be able to take the pressure off the dog if needed or pull them out there. So I would prefer it to be a more structured interaction where I have the control I need and the ability to be able to read both the dogs to make a better decision for the overall health of that dog.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about how to even get there, because I think quite often what people will do is they might go out and rescue a dog and be like, I need to socialize this dog. I'm just going to, like you said, just go to the dog park and throw them in. So let's talk to people a little bit about what the beginning steps should be. Damian, are there any things that you advise clients on, or how do you deal with, like, say a client has a new rescue dog and they put them into a board and train right away? What are the steps that you take to, I think we all agree, let's call socialization exposure or being neutral to their environment. So what are some steps that you take to allow a dog to succeed in their neutrality?
So, excuse me. So at first, if they're board and trained, then the first thing I'm going to do is, before they ever go out in any social situation, is I got to be able to communicate with them, right? So we always talk about the communication system that has to be set up first. So that's the first thing. Or if it's in a home, I tell them, like, don't worry about having your dog go and meet other people and other dogs. In fact, that's going to cause problems early on. So the goal first, before anything, is let's get your dog to look at you as a leader, to engage with you and have a communication system, so that when we're out in public, we can communicate with our dog. So that's step one. And then when I talk about socializing a dog, first it's about going out there and getting engagement from your dog in social situations. So when I had if I have a puppy or a younger dog or a dog that hasn't been exposed to anything, I go out to new places when they're ready, but they're not meeting anybody at that point, right? I go to a park and there's kids playing on a playground and people walking by. I'm going to find a spot that is, as far away as I need it to be. And that's my first step of socializing. Let's go out in society, and I need you to engage with me and ignore things first, right? Because what happens quickly is the dog loses value in us as a human, right? If your dog gets to go meet all these people and other dogs, Even if something bad doesn't happen, like, you know, he has a bad experience, the dog is learning like that you're not important as a leader. I don't know how many people I see go out on a walk with their dogs and their dogs could care less about them, like literally like they're not even alive. So that's my first step. If somebody approaches me while I'm socializing a dog in the beginning, even if it's a personal dog, they don't get to interact with that dog, right? Because again, that's not what we're there for at first. I want you to be able to ignore everything. I want the dog to be able to ignore something before it gets to engage with it. So even if I have a super friendly dog or super, you know, dog friendly or human friendly, I want to make sure that the dog finds me valuable first and that I'm allowing the dog to go say hi. So those are the first steps. Don't worry about your dog greeting other dogs. In fact, that can cause a lot of problems because you can't control that other dog. Or even greeting other people, because then they get to a place where they expect that and they don't know how to handle it when they can't. So the biggest mistake, the thing I do first and the biggest mistake people do is they go out and they try to have the dog meet and greet a bunch of people. It's like, no, once the dog can be engaged with me and neutral to everything around, then depending on the dog, can that dog go and start to interact with those people. So think of socialization, like you said, as exposure, and can your dog be in this social situation and handle it? That is what socialization, and that's how I started, is engage with me, ignore everything else, and then we can start slowly relaxing that.
Yeah, I think Jeremy said this on our other talk the other day. He doesn't even call it socialization anymore, calls it exposure training. And I fully agree with that, because the socialization part, most humans includes interacting. You know, they take a puppy, throw them in a room full of puppies and let them roll around and just do crazy things, or just just let your dog meet every single person and dog it comes across until it becomes problematic. So I think just the terminology itself confuses people. But then also, you know, the large rescue organizations out there are putting out advice, which you guys both know in dog training, devil's in the details here. I want to introduce you, or just read to you guys a couple different points here, and just tell me what potentially is going wrong here in this description. Introducing dogs. First point says, when introducing your dog to another dog, start by keeping them at a polite distance while they get used to each other. If both dogs seem relaxed, you can let them sniff each other briefly. If either dog seems tense, call them apart. Now, Damian, tell me, what are they missing in that paragraph that could possibly be going wrong, either from the owner's perspective or just all of it? Just tell me what is missing there to actually get somebody ready for that type of interaction.
So the first thing I noticed, at least for me, is that, you know, that sounds nice. Like, I'm going to call the dog off, or I'm going to have some control over that dog when they meet, but it doesn't say anything about getting to that spot, right? So if you just read that, it thinks, okay, I'm going to put my dog on a leash and I'm going to let these dogs be near each other, and then slowly, you know, let them introduce each other. But what's going to happen is, you're going to have them on a leash, you're going to have that opposition reflex, and that's going to create tension. But also, you're letting them make mistakes. They're not learning to ignore each other. They're just getting to choose to engage with each other. And then if they're tense, or even if they're not, you know, something bad can happen. So for me, it's like we're missing the communication right off the bat and the engagement with the person. And when I introduce dogs together, when I think they're ready, they're never going to meet at first, right? We're going to go on neutral walks. We're going to let the novelty of that new dog wear off. So I think there's a ton of things wrong with that statement. And I'm sure I've missed a few, but for me, the main thing is, like, where's the communication with your dog? Do you have that? Have you trained for that? Is your dog engaged, like, find you valuable enough to disengage with this other dog, even if you felt like there was an issue? And if you don't have that and you're just using hold them back with leash pressure, you're actually going to exacerbate the situation. So I'm sure there's plenty of other issues there, but that's kind of what stuck out to me.
Yep. Go ahead, Shane.
I think that's the big thing that people understand. You know, as trainers, we come into this from a very structured standpoint. And when I'm training a dog, everything is intentional. So, you know, going on what Damian says, you know, when I think about, like, I'm getting a dog out to train them, if I get a dog out and go right to socialization like that, you know, we're teaching them so many things all at once, you know, like thresholds with walking, making sure they stay next to us. If I let a dog out, and my interaction with a dog to start with is a picture of them seeing a dog, being completely hyper focused on that dog, not on me, and then they pull towards that other dog, which is more than likely what's going to happen. The first training session and structure and overall picture of this is a dog being disobedient and you're starting it off with behaviors that are unwanted. So you just imprinted everything you're trying to undo right away with those behaviors, if that makes sense, because the dog's probably going to hyper focus, it's going to pull towards it, and now we're rewarding them with seeing that dog. So now we just train that dog that every time you see a dog, you should forget about me, pull towards that dog, and then be super energetic. And that's the entire picture of every time you see a dog. So that's going to essentially, and the more you do that, the harder it is going to be to untrain. So that's why the importance of what Damian was saying of set a foundation with the dog, teach them a threshold with walking, teach them to engage with you, teach them to stay in positions to a certain extent, before you start the process of introductions, before you start the process of exposure, because if you can do that, you can set some sort of expectation for when you do get out in those situations, because those are the hardest situations, is introductions with dogs, introductions with people, because they don't see a lot of that as a puppy. We got to show them the picture. And if you start that picture off with pulling, no engagement with you, you just essentially set the dog up for failure and made it 20 times harder for you to untrain that, to then train it back to what you want that to be. So
Yeah. So, there's a whole list of these little things. So I'm just going to throw one more at you guys just to kind of go through here. And again, the devil's in the details here. And quite honestly, if you have a rescue organization as large as this one is, putting this stuff out there without all of the information, you get a whole bunch of people with not a lot of experience with dogs or recognizing what's going on are going to get into trouble and actually create their own problems. This one specifically jumped out at me is helping fearful dogs. To help a fearful dog gain confidence, you can expose them to their fears at a low intensity and pair it with something positive like a treat. So, Damian, what do you think would happen in this case for somebody who's never had a dog before and who's trying to work through this problem with a dog they just rescued?
There's a lot of wrong there. Number one, if your dog is truly fearful, there's a chance that dog's not going to take a treat anyway. So first and foremost, like, even if this was the appropriate way to train, which it isn't, there's a good chance that the dog's gonna be like, I'm not going to take a treat, which is a good thing actually in this situation, because you don't want them to take that treat in that moment. So when you reward a dog, whether it's praise, a toy, food, whatever it is, you're not just rewarding what they're doing, you're rewarding what they're thinking. So your dog is shaking and terrified and nervous and trying to avoid things, and you try to calm them by rewarding them. You're not saying, hey, this is okay. You're saying it's okay to feel like this. It is okay to be afraid, and this is how you deal with that problem. It's the same thing with petting and praise. Love is unconditional, praise is not. So when you praise a dog or pet them, you need to be thoughtful about it. So your dog is scared, it's leaning into you. So what do you say? Hey, it's okay, and you pet that dog. You're telling them it's okay to feel like this. So you're really creating the problem. You're teaching learned helplessness. You're teaching this dog that, hey, if I get scared, let me shut down, let me run away, let me be afraid, let me not be confident, and all that pressure will go away, or I'll get rewarded for it. You're going to create a huge, that's one of the major issues I see, is that instead of teaching the dog how to work through that, we just reinforce it. So the real fix in that moment is, hey, let's use our communication system and things they know, like commands, because they can be confident, right? Your dog's scared around this other dog. You put them on the place. They're still scared, but they're like, hey, I know what I'm doing here. There's a confidence in that. I know how to hold this place. I'm not sure about this over here, but I know that if I hold this place, good things happen. And then once that confidence starts to build, that's when you're going to go in there and reward them, or whatever it may be, a sit, a heel. The goal is to counter condition them to that fear, not to condition them that when they see that, to show me fear or show me this undesired mindset, and I'm going to reward it. So they need to be counter conditioned to that, which means they have to be in a mutually exclusive position. They have to have strong obedience. And again, I'm going to reward the confidence and change their emotional response to that. So it is the exact opposite of what they're saying to do, right? And I don't think a lot of this information, sometimes it may be someone being, a bad faith actor, or being, purposely giving out misinformation. It could be, sometimes it is, but oftentimes too, it's just not knowing, right? And that's why we don't take medical advice from people who aren't doctors. And we don't take, I don't take financial advice to people who've never had any training in accounting or any kind of financial, so just make sure that whoever's giving you this information is knowledgeable enough, right? Because that is the opposite of what we want to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to clarify again, I'm not here to bash rescue organizations and what they do. They're an incredibly hard job. But when they start dishing out training advice like this and leaving out the details and the what ifs and the disclaimers and if this doesn't work, then this, and this, you're setting up owners to fail. And when they fail big. And so, Shane, I mean, it sounds to me like they're skipping over a lot of critical things that need to be mentioned. If you're going to put out this type of information to a brand new dog owner who's going to follow your advice to the T, and you're the rescue organization, and they're leaving this stuff out, it's almost better that they put no information out or fully clarify these statements. You know what I mean? I mean, what are your thoughts on this, especially jumping into how to help fearful dogs? That seems like a big jump from basic socialization or exposure.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much misinformation there, and that's why I think coming to a professional is so important, because I think a big part of it too is you really got to read a dog and understand a dog, and you got to be able to hit thresholds with a dog, because we can put a little bit of pressure on them when it comes to training a dog and with exposure, if we have a fearful dog. But it's really important to understand these things and know what the dog can handle, and really be able to read the dog and know what we can and can't do with the dog. Because if you put too much pressure on the dog goes into fight or flight, and you can cause a lot of issues. And I think it's really a lot of this information is not brought upon when all these rescue organizations, put out the things you should or shouldn't do, because there's a lot more to training than just teaching a dog is sitting down. When it comes to behavior, I mean, it takes a lot of time too. And they don't talk about time. They don't talk about how long it takes. Every dog's different. It could take 6 months to get a dog to a place where it's just comfortable going out and about. We don't know. It's our job to get them as far as we can in the time. But, I think it's good to know as a whole. Damian had it spot on as well. You've got to teach them an understanding. You have to be able to communicate before you start exposing them. And if you don't, you're setting them up for failure, and you can cause more problems in the long run. So with a mixture of good communication, having the tools to communicate with them, and then gradual exposure dependent on the dog and where they're at, because you're going to have to put a little bit of pressure on and get a little bit closer. You're going to have to pull back a little bit. You're going to have to get a little bit closer, pull back a little bit. But that's all determined by the dog and how they're reacting. And you can't really explain that to someone. You have to see it and read it and experience it and know each individual dog and work with them enough, and animals enough, dogs enough, to really get a good grasp of what that is, what you're looking at, how to handle a situation like this. And those are things that can only be taught with experience. You can't just go out and get a dog and see these things, because you're going to miss a lot. So it's easier said than done. And that's why I just think going to a professional that really understands dogs and behaviors is really going to help you guys get your dog the furthest, the fastest, and be able to get to those goals as far as handling the dogs.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm glad you brought up that aspect of time, because that was the glaring thing that when Ray was reading these things, it just made it sound like an owner can go get a dog, throw it in the situation, and boom, it's socialized and you're done.
Yep. It takes the longest. And that's why I tell all my clients is it takes, I've had some dogs come out in training, and I've had some dogs where I stay in contact with the owners, and like a year later, they hit all their goals and they never thought they could, but a year later. And that's following everything that I told them to do to a T, so.
And clearly you're a magician, because we can see it in your hands. So
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm laughing at it. So
I know, I can't.
It's so funny. One thing that I would like to give people is, okay, so we've kind of picked apart some of this common information that we see online. So, and we're touching on it. Let's give them a clear step-by-step. We've talked about communication tools, structure, leadership, engagement, which go back to previous episodes. We've discussed some of this stuff. One that we haven't, that maybe we could spend a few minutes on, it's my favorite thing, is engagement. So Damian, let's touch a little bit on maybe some tips or tricks that clients can do if they're in this situation right now. just some things, engagement games that they can do with their dog to help increase that.
Absolutely, yeah. So engagement to me just simply means that your dog wants to engage with you, wants to have you communicate, is focused on you to some degree or mostly focused on you. And it's easier to start from the get-go, right? Dogs are learning no matter if we're teaching them or not. So if your dog is self-rewarding, if you're not the one showing the dog what you want them to do, they're figuring it out on their own. So the first step, I'll use a puppy, an 8-week-old puppy that I get. The first thing I do is teach that I am the greatest thing in that dog's life. I have all the good things. Your life is going to be great. And if you follow what I tell you and you communicate or you listen to what I'm communicating, wonderful things happen. No matter what's happening around you in the world, I am the end all be all. I got all the good stuff, right? So and that's what it means to be a leader. Your dog looks to you. So if you don't have that to some degree, there's some dogs that are never going to be 100% focused on you, right? They're not drivey enough. They're not food motivated enough or whatever. But if you don't have a strong engagement, no matter where you're at, or you can't get them to engage with you, there's nothing you can do for socializing a dog. Like, you're just going to make mistakes. You're just going to be probably punishing that dog for making mistakes and things like that. So the first thing you want to do is at home, low distractions, is teach the dog how to engage with you. The easiest way to do that is don't devalue their food, make them work for it. They'll enjoy it. Dogs are, they want a job. That'll be the quickest, or toy or whatever they find rewarding, right? Once you have that engagement at home, then you can start socializing that dog by taking them out into the real world, not introducing them to everybody, but teaching them, even out here, even with all this exciting stuff, focusing on me, and earn that we let a dog's behavior dictate how much freedom they have. So let that dog's behavior dictate when he's ready to start engaging with other things, right? So if you're focused on me, you're not worried about that barking dog, you're not trying to chase that running kid. When I say your name, you turn and look at me, or you come to me. Great. Okay, now your behavior dictates that maybe we can start doing some of that stuff. So for me, step by step, the first step is, if it takes a week or it takes a year, or whatever it takes for you to become the most valuable thing in your dog's life, is the first step, because that's how you're going to get out there and get them to ignore something crazy. A dog chasing a squirrel when a bunch of kids running around sounds pretty exciting, but I still want my dog to be able to check in with me at that moment. So that's my first step, right? If you want to go first step, and then I'm going to make sure that they're going to do that out in the real world before I ever let them kind of engage. So just keep in mind, no matter what, your dog is learning. So hopefully you're teaching them what you want, but if not, they're learning on their own. They're self-rewarding, and they're figuring out how I can interact with the world to get what I want. And I would much rather create positive behaviors early on than try to break down unwanted behaviors.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the great thing about engagement is, I think training sounds so serious, right? Like, everyone thinks they're training their dog and they get tense and like, oh, I got to do the things and I have to be perfect. Engagement is fun. Like, go play with your dog, be fun with your dog. Your dog will want to work with you, want to play with you. So go be goofy. Who cares what anybody thinks? Go run around your backyard, that sort of thing. Like, have your dog chase you, come towards you, those sorts of things. It's absolutely my favorite part of training, because that's where you get to have the good times and the fun. Ray.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this. I mean, this is probably, it would seem really obvious when you take a step back, is everybody, if you go to a restaurant, and you'll see how many tables of people sitting there glued to their phones, not even talking to each other and sending messages to each other across the table. When you go out for a walk with your dog, put your phone away. I mean, that is like the simplest thing I can tell people do to engage with your dog, get them to actually care about being around you and being in the moment with your dog. Because if you're ignoring all that stuff, you're missing the signs that your dog's getting fired up on something, or avoiding something, or they're not doing the right thing. You're just not spending quality time with them, and dogs don't understand why you're glued to that little black thing that you're staring at. So I think that's just a key point. I would always tell any new dog owner is, like, if you're going to be around your dog, right? And then ditch the phone. Shane?
Yeah, I think too, with everything being said, just real quick, I think the whole part of structure too is a big part of socialization. And with that being said, especially with a young dog, I like to, be very structured with them, especially in the beginning, because if I can utilize structure and then get them out and play with them, engage, have fun with them, and then put them up, the only fun they're ever seeing is me, which is going to cause them to always want to be attached to me, because I'm going to use the food. I'm going to use fun engagement. I sometimes go out with a puppy and run around and then play dead, lay down real quick, and then like the chase game, and then quick get back up, and then they're so indulged in me that they just want to follow me around, and then I'll reward them at the right times when they do come to me, and then I put them up again, and then they're looking forward to it again, and it's like I get them out, and I start by playing fun little games, and not necessarily even strict obedience. I can do a little bit of luring here and there, and like, you know, sprint to a pet cot and either have food on it already, or, you know, they jump and run on it, and then I reward them and then run away from it. So it doesn't have to be a super structured thing to start. It's just, how silly can I be to engage with them to get them to like me? I'll make weird noises. I'll run around, scream sometimes just to get their attention. And then it's prey drive. So you move around, you make weird noises, and they get drawn to it. And that's a good way to just start with it. But yeah, I mean, structure with that helps out, because then they get out, they get this fun experience, and they go up, they get out, they get this fun experience, they go up. So they're just drawn to you. So yeah.
And they're going to be drawn to you magically.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's everywhere.
It's so funny. Sorry. Damian, you had something.
Yeah, just real quick, that I could touch on what Ray mentioned about like put your phone away. Like if you're not like if you don't find value in the training, and it's a slog for you to go out and engage with your dog, but they're not going to want to do it. So you got to find value in it. And sometimes it's not fun in the beginning. Maybe if you got a rescue dog or a dog with behavioral issues, like it's sometimes tough and not, you know, it's stressful even. That's fine. But once you got to find value, and you got to want to go out and work with your dog. Like when you go on a structured, if you're dreading your structured walk with your dog is going to be dreading it too. So that's a really good point. Find value in working with your dog. For me, it's a special time when I finally get that engagement with a dog and they want to work with me. That's the funnest part, right? Like, oh, this is fun. Let me go out and now I can challenge you and let me see where you're at. So that's a really good point. Put your phone away and focus on your dog. And if you don't have value in working with your dog's not going to have value in working with you.
Yeah, that's an amazing point too. I mean, I think people underestimate how hard it is to train a dog, truly. And really, they don't even think about dog training per se. This is kind of like the dentist. Like, you don't go to the dentist unless your tooth's right out of your mouth, right? They call us after the dog bit somebody or started doing some stupid behaviors, or they just got out of hand. So this is why, and I know I've said this before, but if you're seeking dog training advice online, you're probably going to confuse yourself, scare yourself, or both, because it's oversimplified. It's not explaining the what ifs. It's not giving you plan B, C, and D. It's just listing out, this is what works in a sterile environment or with this type of dog, with this mindset. You know, again, it's not taking account to the dog that you have in front of you, which may be very complex. And I think this is why people get this all wrong, because again, puppies are cute for a reason, so you don't kill them. They are hard to deal with. There's a lot going on with puppies. You know, you've got potty training, you've got crate training, you've got a myriad of things that you're shaping behaviors that you can't even correct yet because they're too young to understand. So I think this is the thing I really want to get across to people, that it's okay to ask for help. You know, if you had a dog and, you know, for 15 years and you just lost him and you adopted this brand new puppy from the shelter, you may have forgot how much work it was to deal with that puppy. And to get a fresh set of eyes on there to kind of help you lay out a good structured approach so you don't have behavioral problems is the ultimate way to go. So doing the training is non-negotiable. Like, you have to do it. I mean, like Damian said, I mean, the dog's going to learn on its own, or it's going to learn with you. The best thing you could do is when that dog is moldable in puppy form and you're going through the socialization or exposure phase, you're setting them up for things that you're going to mandate when they become adult dogs. You know, the non-negotiable, you will heel with me on a leash. When I tell you to sit, you're going to sit. When you lay over in your place, you're going to stay there until I release you. Those type of things are non-negotiable. What happens is the dogs typically grow up into that teenager phase, you know, throw the middle paw in the air and decide they're going to do what they want. And they wonder why their sweet little dog that was doing all the things so nice when they're 2 or 3 months old turns into a holy terror about 5 or 6 months old. That's typically the turning point where we would define them as an adult dog, and we would start using communication tools or whatever is needed, if needed. So that's why I wanted to just make that point. you know, when you're looking for information online or you're getting information from a rescue or even your vet, we've already talked about that too. You know, check where this information is coming from and really look into a professional that knows what they're doing. I think that's just the point I really wanted to make.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason we're putting these videos out and why it is general information and why we're not saying you do A, B, C, D, and you're going to get this dog. It's because it's variable and it changes every dog. And so that's why we're putting out the general information that, you know, here's some guidelines on what you can do at home, but we really can't give you definitively. It always depends. That's one of the most frustrating things about dog training is it always depends. But Ray kind of hit on one of the next things that I wanted to talk about is signs of a poorly socialized dog. And don't take this negatively like, oh, my dog is poorly socialized. It's not like a sentence. This can be fixed through proper training, and that's why we're here. But Damian, let's talk about some signs, like if a dog is poorly socialized, what the behavior looks like when we see that.
Yeah, so the major one that I see more than anything is reactivity. The number one cause in my experience to reactivity isn't aggression or fear, even though those can be reasons for it. Those are not the number one reason is over socialized. The dog sees another dog or another person. They're so used to being able to run up to them and engage with them on their own terms that when you don't let them, when you put that leash pressure on them or whatever it is, they lose their mind, right? And that barking and lunging and whining and all that stuff, often people don't realize that's what's happening. They see it as aggressive or they see it as fearful or whatever. But no, that dog just doesn't know how to handle not going up to that dog and saying hi, or that person and saying hi. And so that's the major sign. And what's the problem with reactivity or any kind of overstimulation is the dog's going to make a poor decision, even if they want to make the right decision. Think of, you know, humans as well. When we get overstimulated, we're in a bad headspace. We're super mad. What do people tell you to do? Walk away for 10 minutes because you're not going to make a good decision. You got to manage your own state of mind. It's the same for the dog. So that dog's not going to manage his own. We have to manage it. So reactivity is the main one. The dog just doesn't know how to handle it, right? Another one can be fearfulness, right? The dog sees anything new outside, anything out of the ordinary, and the dog is scared of it. Those are the two major ones that I see. The reactivity from over-socialized and the fearfulness of under-socializing a dog are the two major ones I see.
What about you, Shane? Do you see anything different? And if not, one thing that I think, which we can touch on if you do see different things, is talking to people about body language too. So I'll let you.
Yeah, I mean, those are probably the main things that are seen, especially with me too. It's, you know, fearfulness, reactive behaviors, you know, and that determines your experience when you're in environments, you know. So I mean, the dogs could be in fight or flight when you're in environments, you know, and those are like the two biggest things that we see. And as far as, you know, body language, as far as the dog goes, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because I think what happens, you know, going back to those things that Ray read, it's like, you know, just throw your dog in these situations. And most dog owners don't know what they're looking at. You know, they see a tail wagging, they think it's a happy dog.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every dog's different, and that's the hard part to distinguish is, you know, every dog is a little bit different. Every dog has a little bit different signs. So it's really understanding your dog specifically and getting to know them at that sort of level. But, you know, from hackles up to a tucked tail to shaking, to, you know, being a little bit lower to ears tucked back. There's so many different things that dogs can do that will give you signs of stress, of fearfulness, aggression, you know, snarling the lip, licking the lips. I mean, there's so many to go over that you could start to analyze your dog and figure out, you know, what its signs are, what its issues are, and be able to start the process of controlling the behaviors to a certain extent. So,
Yeah, Damian.
Yeah, those are great. There's a couple of body language, you know, different body languages that that people misconstrue all the time. Number one is my dog is smiling. Look how happy my dog looks because they're smiling. And that's oftentimes a sign of stress, right? Like dogs don't, they're not going to smile when they're happy. You're going to read their tails and different things like that. So that's a big one. They're like, oh, this dog's happy. It's like, no, that dog is stressed as can be, right? So there's an easy one that, of course, to us, it looks like the dog is happy and comfortable, but it's not. And then you mentioned one as well, which is the tail, right? There are different types of tail wagging. You have like a nice, calm and relaxed tail. That's one thing. And then you have a tick-tocking tail, right? One that's really kind of in a certain rhythm. And that can mean a lot of things, right? That can be that dog is stressed or maybe feeling like it's about to do something. So if you don't know that, our instinct is to think that they're, happy, excuse me, that they're happy. But that's not really the case. And one more point I'll make about socialization while I was thinking about it is rude dogs. Your dog might be dog friendly. But again, if your dog that's a sign of a poorly socialized dog is, okay, your dog's friendly, but it's rude. It's jumping on dogs. It's hip checking them. It's inserting itself between everybody or between dogs. It's creating issues. I see that all the time at dog parks. And it's like, yes, your dog is not aggressively attacking any dog, and it may even be friendly, but it's eliciting behaviors from everyone else. If I walked into a party and started getting up in everybody's face, stepping between people with conversations, yelling at people, jumping up, pushing folks, even if I was happy about it, it wouldn't last, right? I'd be like, I wouldn't be invited back to that party. So it's our responsibility to not only make sure that if we take a dog in a social situation that they're not going to be aggressive, but that they're polite and they're not doing rude behaviors.
So I do have a question, or throw this past you guys. How do you guys tell clients to navigate that conflict between a brand new puppy coming home? You've got a vet telling them that they're going to be on X and X vaccination schedule, which could take anywhere between 3 or 4 months sometimes. And then you also have, from the behavioral side of things, an imprinting period with puppies, which we're told to heavily socialize them. So how do you tell your clients to navigate that, and what kind of outweighs the other, and what are the precautions you would take when you have a brand new puppy? Shane, go for it.
There's so much you can do ahead of time with that, before they get their puppy shots. Engagement, again, we go back to that, is going to be a big part of this. As a puppy, I'm going to engage with them. I'm going to move around with them. I'm going to, hand feed them, build up their confidence in the house, because environmental things can be in the house too. It doesn't have to be outside. It could be vacuums. It could be the dishwasher. It could be the sink. It could be water. There's so many things at home that you can expose them to just to build their confidence up, and even go right outside your door if cars drive by. There's so many things without getting them out into the real world to get them prepared to kind of start that exposure out and about. But there are so many things at home that you can kind of prepare them for at first.
Yes, Damian, what are your thoughts on that too? Because I think the imprinting period was 16 weeks on a puppy, typically, when they're supposedly, learning all this stuff that you're trying to socialize them with. Again, there's lots of different schools of thought when you're talking about immunization schedule. There's a lot of them that over immunize, and they hit them up every 2 weeks with shots. Or there's other ones that string it out from a longer period of time. And that longer period of time would go way past that 16-week window. I know when I had puppies, really the consideration was, are we in a high parvo area, an area that's going to be really susceptible to those type of things that would really get to a puppy, after its second round of shots? What are your thoughts on kind of weighing the risks and rewards there?
I think you hit it on the head there, is that, yes, there is a concern, and you need to make sure that, you're not putting your puppy in a dangerous or a risky situation, rather. But you can still take your dog out. You're just going to be careful about where you take them. When I got Tempest, I started at 10 weeks going out and about, but I didn't take him to a dog park. I didn't take him to a place where there's a lot of dogs, or there's a lot of, I took him somewhere where he could see some things, but I'm over here. There's very low risk of him picking up something that is like that, something dangerous or deadly to a dog. And knowing your area, maybe you are in an area with a really high rate of like parvo or something along those lines. And in that case, absolutely, you may do things a little bit different, but you don't have to keep your dog in your house. In fact, your yard can be, can also have things, right, to some degree, but it's not as prevalent as, let's say, if you took them to a place where there's a dog park. I wouldn't take my puppy there. Where even if I didn't take them in the dog park, I wouldn't take them to that place because a lot of dogs go walk past there and do all those things. So just find a spot where it's not heavily trafficked, where you can take them out into the real world and be safe. And so I think you need to be concerned, but also realistic and say, hey, I'm not, that's another reason why you don't let your puppy greet other dogs and other people, because you don't know what they have or what they're carrying around with them. But so don't be too afraid of that, especially if you're in an area that isn't known for these things, right? Take them out, just keep them in a safe place. If you go to the park, take them to the corner where there's never any dogs. You know, if you take them somewhere, to a downtown area or whatever, that you're off by yourself or somebody, you minimize those risks. But it is a decision between risk and reward. So that's my advice to people is, yes, be wary, understand what's around in your environment, but also don't, your dog going out isn't going to automatically pick up these things. So I think that's fine to be cautious, but also take them out. That's my advice. Like, get your dog out there, just do it in a safe way.
I think when we're talking about socialization in general, like not even just puppies, just new dogs, I think the whole dog training community saw a big wave of this during COVID. Everybody went out and got themselves dogs to be locked down with. And then when COVID restrictions started to lift, what did we see? We saw reactivity, we saw dog fights, we saw all sorts of chaos. And we saw a huge surge of people needing dog training. So I think right there, that's a good testimony and good example that a lot of people can relate to is on a large scale of when socialization is not done at all, virtually little or not at all. And you could see on a global scale what it did. It caused this massive wave of behavioral problems. And I think everyone across the country saw it. It's now subsiding, but it was a big thing for a while there. So it's a really good topic. I think we've really kind of covered all the bases as far as what most people might have heard about socialization and what it should be. And we've given examples of what takes priority and how it should be handled. Do you guys have any other tips regarding this that you would throw out there to a first-time dog owner who's brand new to all this?
Sorry, I wanted to raise my hand too. First of all, I agree with you, Damian. When we have puppies, I do expose my dogs outside in a very controlled and careful manner. So I totally agree with you on that. Just to kind of build on what Ray was saying, I thought maybe we could talk to people about how to gradually improve the socialization with their dog, or just some tips and tricks we can give them to wrap this up on what they might be able to do at home to improve their dog's socialization. Ultimately, yeah, I do think professional training is the best way, but let's give some people some quick tips and tricks on what they can do. Damian, let's start with you.
A big one for me is teaching your dog what state of mind gets them to interact with things. So we have a puppy, we have a young dog, guests come over, which is something, even if you're not taking your dog out, guests are going to come over. And what does everybody do? And of course we do, because we love puppies, and we just mob them, right? The dog gets all excited and jumps up on your lap. And when I say puppy, I mean 8 weeks to 16 or 20 weeks. It doesn't have to be this itty bitty little thing. And then the dog is overstimulated, excited, and that's how it got what it wanted, right? It learned that, hey, if I go wild and get crazy, that's how I get to say hi to people. And then the moment you don't let them, right, they don't know how to handle that. So right from the beginning, you can work on your dog socializing around other people. One way to do that is I have guests over, my puppies or new dog is in a crate. I bring them out, but again, they don't get to interact with that person at first. That's not what we're doing. That's the socialization, is that this person can be around and you don't have to lose your mind. So, and then we can do a little training. We can do some place work. We can do engagement. The dog's on a leash. So the dog tries to go say hi, a little tug. The dog looks at us. We reward them. All of a sudden they're saying, hey, even though this person and this other exciting stuff's going on, let me engage with my person. Then once the novelty of that person has worn off, right, and they're in a good state of mind, then you can let them go say hi, because the dog starts to learn, oh, that's when I can ignore this person, if I'm in a calmer state of mind, I get to say hi. That you're teaching that dog what gets them what they want. I love dogs, but dogs think they're kind of a selfish animal, right? What gets me what I want through the path of least resistance. That is how a dog thinks. And so if they learn, oh, just be calm and collected and wait for permission, or look to my person as to what to do next, that's what they're going to do out in the real world. So just keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that your guest can't get on the floor and roll around with your puppy. I think that's great. But just make sure that the dog is learning how to get that appropriately.
That's great. I think that's amazing. Shane, what advice do you have for people?
Yeah, I think it all goes back to like start implementing structure in some way, shape, or form. You know, because you can control that too, and you can get that calm effect, whether it's with a crate, whether it's with a pet cot, and teaching them a place command of some sort. But yeah, Damian hit that right on as far as, you know, my advice is don't let a puppy or dogs in general have a free for all, you know, because you have to teach them that switch. Engagement's going to be super important, you know, just doing training sessions. And I tell people they don't have to be long sessions. They could be 30-second sessions. They could be a minute sessions, you know, just get in that engagement with that dog, that training with that dog. That's really going to help. Especially if you're in the house. I know like Washington, it rains a lot. So a lot of times people are stuck at home. So, you know, set up a routine for yourself. And I think routine is going to be very important for dogs. You know, my dogs are all old now. Routine's great. You know, they're 10, 11, and my youngest one is over 8. And, you know, they still have a routine of crate. And, you know, we get out and work and play Frisbee. You know, you can do fun things with them, but just, I would say, make them work for that before you do something fun with them.
Yeah, it is invaluable once your dog gets older to see all the work that you put in. And yeah, but Damian, you have another one.
Just real quick. Yeah, sorry. And you can put the dog up. If you can't be successful, if you can't work them through that early on, right? Because maybe you're seeing guests you haven't seen in a long time. Maybe you're having a party and you're enjoying and you just can't focus on making sure the dog isn't rehearsing behaviors you don't want. Put the dog up, work the dog physically and mentally, make sure they're sated. And then when your guests come over, they're in their crate. That is an okay thing to do. Like, not everything has to be a training exercise. You need to find that time, sure. But that's something I see a lot too, is someone's just not into it. They're trying to enjoy themselves. They can't be successful, but they feel bad for whatever reason about putting their dog up and not. It's like, no, it's the best thing you can do for your dog in that situation. If you cannot be successful or get your dog to be successful, or you just don't have it in you, do your part before your guests or whatever situation it is, mental and physical exercise, engagement, all that good stuff, and then put them up and enjoy yourself. And next time you have time or the wherewithal or the mindset to be successful, go for it. So that's a big one. It's okay to just put your dog up and instead of letting them rehearse behaviors we don't want.
Yeah, that's a great one too, because think about the frustration that the owner avoids. You know, it's like a win for everybody. So this was great, you guys. I think, again, once again, there's a million other little topics that we've discussed that I think we could expand on. But for now, this was amazing. If any of you out there have any other questions for us, we want to know what information you need to help your dog. So hit us up at our website at koru-k9.com. You can email us at woof@koru-k9.com. And of course, our social media accounts. We're on all platforms at koru-k9.com. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button below. We have a lot of these scheduled in the coming months. I probably have 4 trainer talks scheduled in the next few weeks. So there's going to be a lot of information coming your way. But gentlemen, thank you. And we will see everybody soon.